Hey there, this is Joe Keyport, the other half of Ear Coffee, letting you know, reminding you if you have been listening to the podcast last 3 weeks, that our birthday show, the Ear Coffee 5th anniversary show, is coming up a week and a day from August 10th on August 18th over at the Treasury in St. Paul. We got 4 really cool bands who want to celebrate with us: Prathloons, OK Nice, Blue Driver, and Careful Gaze. Careful Gaze is literally the interview you're listening to right now. They're playing for us. So if you like what you hear, you want to hear more, come on out to the show on the 18th at the Treasury. Tickets are $15 and they can be purchased right now. Head to the show notes or any of our social medias to find out how to purchase those. We're going to have some cool things available as part of our 5th anniversary. So come on out the 18th, the Treasury in St. Paul. I'm going to let Careful Gaze kick off and talk about their cool new record. So stick around right here on the Ear Coffee Podcast.
What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For today's episode, we welcomed Minneapolis rock band Careful Gaze back onto the show. Last month, they released their long-awaited sophomore album, Wrath Like Flowers Upon My Brow. We went deep on the album's inspirations, tracklist, and touchstones, how the band very intentionally made the best album they could, and a whole lot more. Without any further ado, here's my interview with Gabe, Bailey, Ben, and Preston of Careful Gaze on the Ear Coffee Podcast. Glad to have you guys. How are we doing this Saturday morning?
I'm doing great.
Pretty
Doing
good.
well.
Yeah, I'm caffeinated.
Yeah. You guys at least knew what day it was, so you're doing better.
I actually didn't.
Thank you for your honesty.
It feels
This is
like
a
a
safe
Sunday.
space for us to be honest about.
It
not
feels
knowing
like a
what day
Sunday.
it is. It does feel like a Sunday. Well, disregarding that, I would love to start with, just for listeners at home, let's go in a little circle, do some introductions, name, role in the band, and any other information you think might be pertinent to get things going. Why don't we start with you, Preston?
Hi, my name's Preston J. West, and I play guitar in Careful Gaze.
Hello, my name is Ben, and I play drums in Careful Gaze.
Are we doing full names or just first?
I did it as a joke because last time I fucked up my intro.
I'm Gabe, and I sing in Careful Gaze.
I'm Bailey, and I play guitar in Careful Gaze.
Aslan is working,
Oh,
but Aslan plays bass.
yes.
Hi, Aslan.
We miss you, Aslan.
Miss you.
Wish you weren't at work, but so it goes.
Yep.
Here in spirit.
They're here in spirit.
Because we keep making him take time off to go on the open road.
Road
That'll do
dogs.
it.
Yep.
At least we're not doing the joke that we used to do where if a band member had to miss, we would just pretend that they were dead. Like that's just like that's. I don't want them to be dead. Like, we can keep
I saw
everybody
that fool
alive.
last night.
Same. A lot can happen between now and last night.
That's like up to 12 hours.
Yeah.
It was very dark.
Lots of,
I didn't like
there's
that.
room for lots of scooter riding.
Yes.
Cool. Well, this is not a podcast about scooters, unfortunately. So
Sorry.
we will. No, don't apologize. Don't try
No,
to shame.
We'll digress from scooter talk.
We'll digress from scooter
We'll
talk.
come back to the scooter bit later.
We'll revisit that on a later date. So, as many listeners may know, or at least hopefully know, we had the band back on the show in, I think, November. It was last fall. Y'all
Has
have
it
been
really
busy
been?
for a few years.
Has it
Have
been that
continued to be busy.
long?
I think it was like November 21. At least when that's
was
when
like-
the episode I think came out.
Yeah, shortly after Cold Spring, I think, came
Yes.
out. Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we got to chat about pretty much all the pre-existing music, all the prior stuff that y'all have put out from the debut album, handful of EPs and singles. But today we are here primarily to talk about your debut album, get a little bit more in depth with that, even get a little bit of track by track, and like we said, go deep because we're that kind. That's what you do on a podcast. You get deep. I think that's in the Bible somewhere.
Cue that one. I'm diving in. I'm going deep.
That gave me such specific, like horrible flashbacks. Like, oh my gosh. But since November, let's kind of fill in those gaps because the album came out in July, but it's been a while since we've chatted. What has Careful Gaze been up to since last fall? I know primarily working on the record, but yeah, let's fill me in. I want to know.
That was a really big part of it. We played a terrible show in a blizzard once.
That was
Like
rough.
like an Amy Klobuchar kind of blizzard, or like an actual blizzard.
Well, it was, I don't know if you remember, there was like one day in December in Minneapolis where the snow was just terrible and
what was it, like 16,
worse than normal.
16 inches?
Something like
Something.
that.
It
yeah.
was,
We were playing at the White Squirrel, and it was like us, Okay Nice, Love Ulysses, and I think No Caffeine. So it was like
Oh,
it was
yeah,
a
yeah.
cool,
I remember seeing
cool
that
lineup. Yeah,
Good build,
yeah.
but loading in with 16 inches of snow made me want to quit.
We loaded. To be fair, we loaded in with like 4, and then we loaded out with like
There.
10, 12, and it was like, what the crap is happening?
it's like we felt like, at least I was driving, and I felt like I didn't actually drive home. I felt like I just like sailed home. Like my tires weren't actually on concrete. I
like
was just
levitating a little
drifting
bit.
through snow.
I disassociated in the car both there and back because I just kept looking out the window going, oh my God, why? What are we doing right now?
And then I had to try to figure out how to get the trailer off of my SUV, like in our snow covered driveway. So that was also very sick. But yeah, beyond that, that was like the only other noteworthy thing that happened between now and then we made an album. That was like, obviously that took up a lot of time.
It was fun.
Yeah, we took a lot of time off from like just playing shows to just hunker down and solely focus on that just because we're very busy creatures. And if we had tried balancing still playing shows and kind of the monotony of that, we would have been more stressed out than we already were from the experience.
Even without like touring or anything, like just gigging locally is like, it's great and all. So I don't want to sound too hateful or anything, but like it's a burden. Like it takes a lot of time, a lot of coordination.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And then
Coordination
also,
for sure.
Yeah, and then also like when it's just like 10 degrees outside, like constantly, and you have to load in and load it. Like there's just that's just another aspect of like, oh, this is a little rough right now. Like it's so cold. I don't want to be doing this.
We did, even if the set goes well, like is this really worth it?
We did play a couple spring shows. We played Coyote Kids Farewell Show, which was really fun.
That
and
was
sad.
insane.
Yeah, that looked like I've never seen the Amsterdam like that full from like seeing like some of the pictures and everything.
Yeah, they sold it out, which was like really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good warm up show, kind of coming back from recording and kind of not doing any kind of live aspect for a while because like we weren't even practicing, like we were solely working on the album. So that kind of that was our kind of putting our feet back in the water a little bit, get back into the practice routine, trying out. We had a new kind of get up live, just using new tracks, new gear, all that good stuff.
Very new Get Up Live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a whole new member.
Yeah.
since I last talked
Yeah.
with y'all.
Yeah.
I guess we can. I'm curious about that. How did you end up in the fold?
So, yeah, I have known Gabe Preston and Aslan for quite a while, like way back in the Hunter days, through just maintaining that relationship, playing gigs together. Both of our bands played together, just like having that knowledge and relationship.
What other band were you in?
I was in a band called The Atlantis Theorem.
Okay, yeah, I think I've heard that name. Yeah, cool.
Yep.
And 17 other bands.
Yeah, and I played in
One
a
of those.
punk group called Shot Memory. I've done work in Minneapolis for quite a bit.
Yeah,
but
playing around.
Started filling in, I'd say probably more consistently in that fall of 2021. I did work with them for their Loud Howls EP.
Yeah.
So we did like the live video recording of that, which was super rad. And then like all the fall shows went well. And then they had, fill-ins. They had one drummer that was announced that ended up falling through, and then they had fill-in after fill-in, and then came to me, started filling in. After that, bringing up conversations about the album, just like who's going to do drums for it.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe had already written most of the parts, and they wanted someone to track it, who ended up falling through, and then it came to me about doing it. And I was like, yeah, I'll definitely do it. I'm
that
excited about the
opportunity.
music. Yeah, I love the tunes. I love the message. So just got to work, got to rehearsing and practicing and writing, like spent pretty much all of December writing and like kind of reworking the drum parts. And then, going in and recording in January with Nick Pocock from In Search of Solace.
Okay.
So yeah, that went super well. Like we did all 10 in one day.
Yeah.
For
From
drums? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, from our perspective, it was like Ben has always been a friend of the band and a great drummer, and we literally the only reason he didn't just become our drummer when we last like lost a drummer. It was just because of like having so many other bands and stuff and not wanting to like detract from those. Since we try to keep ourselves busy. But then once one of those ended up not continuing, RIP the Atlantis Theorem.
Yeah.
Rip.
Love that band. But once that ended up happening and like the timing worked out, and then Ben came in and tracked all the drums in one day for the album, we were just like, all right, we should just have him in the band now officially. Like he's been
I think we can have a conversation now.
I remember it was day 2, was it? Because we went back the second day to like make sure things were cool. And we were sitting in the control room, and Ben, it was Gabe, Aslan, I, and Bailey, were you there?
You were there for day 1.
I was there for day 1.
Okay, you weren't there. You weren't there for day 2, and then it was Nick Pocock doing the recording, and Ben walks out of the room, and Nick hadn't turned his mic back on yet, and I just like look at Gabe, and I was like, "Why the fuck isn't this man in our band?" And Nick just turned around. He was like, "I'm glad I didn't turn on my mic to talk to Ben. I'm gonna do that now."
What I remember was slightly different. I remember he had the talkback mic on.
Oh, was it
you
on?
were like, we need to talk about Ben. And then he turned it off. And I was like, well, this is going to sound really bad to Ben doing the drums in there right now. Because then as soon as it was turned off.
I don't think I had the cans on at that point.
There was something funny happened where I said something that was very like, "What are we doing right now?"
Yeah, after there was no audio into the drum room.
If you'd heard that, it's like almost like threatening. It's like, we need to talk about the Ben problem.
Yeah,
and you're like,
oh shit.
the me problem?
I came home the first day after recording. I remember I looked at you and I was just like, why is Ben not in our band?
Yeah.
Like he just knocked out 10 songs, only having like had them for what, like 3
months?
4, maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
We had, because you were in the fold at the end of
March. Well, I wasn't officially until March of this year, but like it was established that I was going to be point of contact for filling in and or doing the record.
I was gonna say, we asked you to do the record at like the end of November, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then we spent like all of December doing all the pre-pro with drums and like you had those songs for maybe 3 months.
Yeah. But I think like those demoing sessions, those pre-pro sessions, just like kind of ingrained those in my mind because like you kind of laid the groundwork and I was able to like just overlay on top. So yeah, I mean, it was just like, these are kind of set in my brain right now. We're going to go in and rip them.
Selfishly, it's really cool for me to hear what it sounds like having like started, like written the drum parts for the album, but then a way better drummer came in and like made them cool. Because like when we were writing it, it was like as most of the songs were written as a 3-piece where I was drumming and singing and doing everything kind of at once. And then hearing like Ben take them, so hearing kind of like parts that I contributed to, but just performed way better is really cool.
Expanded upon, improved upon.
Yeah.
It's also like you're both able to focus on your individual kind of primary roles in the band.
Oh, yeah.
A lot more easily, even if I'm still a sucker. Like anyone that can play their instrument and sing at the same time, that's impressive. I can't really do that. But especially like anyone that can drum and sing. I'm like, how?
Like
how?
Hail the Sun, Donovan, if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, I'm sorry, Malero, the drummer singer for Hail the Sun. Insane, absolutely insane between like drumming capability, vocal capability. It's nuts.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we may have taken that away from Careful Gaze, but I think it's definitely a net positive. We're all doing good.
Yeah. He doesn't do it for the whole show. He is like someone else who
He does it for all the songs off of not all of them, but most of the songs off of, was it Eulogy?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still, it's nuts. I remember when they were playing at the Amsterdam, watching him do that. I was like, this is that's not a normal thing.
Their new album is really, really good too. New Age Filth.
Well, the shout out period of the show will be later, so we'll alt tab that and like save that for later.
Love it. Love it.
That's not alt tabbing. I don't know. I'm just said computer words to sound like I know
Window
what I'm doing.
D. Collapse all those windows.
Control F. Cool. So that will, I mean, kind of lead us just to get into the album as we getting into recording. Just came out in this past month on July 15th, so it's available everywhere. Now that you're like, if you're hearing this, it is available. You should go check it out if you haven't already. I actually wonder how many people listen to podcasts and then check out the albums, or the other way around. I've never asked anybody.
Ooh. Yeah.
It's like, oh, hearing the band talk about the album made them want to check it out. Or it's like, oh, I'm already a fan.
Yeah.
Listen to them talk about it. total just intrusive thought there. No idea.
Well, this is the first podcast that we'll have like talked about it somewhat in depth, because I think the other one that we've done isn't out yet, isn't released. So,
Well, we'll take advantage of that. Make it seem like we're the first to the punch.
I'm going to talk shit about myself.
I'll talk mad shit about myself.
All right. The album is called Wrath Like Flowers Upon My Brow. It's your sophomore record. It's the first one in a while. I think since 2019 was when the last one came out. Then y'all stayed busy. But still, it's good to actually have a new album. I'm a sucker for any kind of album. Not EPs and singles. Love those too. But very excited that it is here. So you started recording in like January-ish, you were saying, or February, around like just kind of winter. And that's what you were telling me on the last podcast. But when did the writing, kind of initial like conceptualizing as a trio, when did that first really start kind of coming in to perspective, I guess, where you're like, oh yeah, we're working on these songs. We want to make this next batch into an album instead of just kind of continuing with maybe another EP, another couple singles, just kind of doing what the band had been doing for those few years in between the two records. When were the seeds starting to get planted for these songs?
Pretty much right after we released Loud Howls, The Eternal Wolf, in fall of 2020, we started working on stuff. I know we released a couple singles in 2021, but like we knew that we wanted to have a full album again. I think, you said you're a sucker for albums, like same, like, and I think at least from my perspective, releasing a full album feels so much more like fulfilling. Like with this release, I feel like we have this like body of work out, and that just like feels really good, as opposed to just releasing like one song that it's not attached to anything maybe, and then it just like goes away kind of. Because we've done that a lot because we couldn't financially make an album for a while. And yeah, so I guess writing basically was like late 2020, early 2021, and we just started writing as many songs as possible, Preston, Aslan, and I. And then we wrote some more with Bailey in the band. And then we like scrapped some, rewrote some, and then we were doing pre-pro stuff, like demoing stuff out in Bailey's studio, like for the good later half of 2021, getting ready for it. Just making sure that we had like all the sessions in place and everything.
Yeah, that was happening like right around the time we were also doing Cold Spring. Because I remember before we started tracking Cold Spring, were we pre-proing by that point? Or was that all after
I
Cold
think
Spring?
it was all after Cold Spring, because so we did like 2 rounds of pre-pro almost, because the Gabe, Aslan, and I wrote a bunch of songs, demoed all of them. Gabe did MIDI drums. I like recorded all of like pre-pro guitars, and we did Aslan's bass all in my room. And then we like, boom, then Bailey came on. We did Cold Spring, and then like started round 2 of pre-pro with like new songs we had written or songs that like we had changed. And that's when we started, I think, demoing those.
How many did we do? We did Wrath. We did Park.
Default
we did
Days.
Windows. Default Days. Was there another? I think that was it.
That were on the album, yeah.
Were there others that I think it was just those 4 that we cleaned up and like actually recorded after the fact. Cause I'd still consider those demos. Like the pre-pro really only consisted of Ben's drumming.
Yeah. With kind of, you mentioned just especially like kind of going back, reworking songs, especially once you added new members and kind of the band continued to kind of shift and grow. Was that kind of a new process or like a kind of new, I guess, experience with this album where you were kind of bashing out the songs with the 3 of you working on those, or then going back, tweaking them, scrapping some, coming up with new songs? Has that always kind of been the way you've approached, like, especially like a body of songs, like you were kind of talking about, versus just like laying down like one track or just writing the lyrics to just one song, maybe, and think, okay, this is just one song versus this is gonna be part of something. We're gonna contribute this to a part of an album of a whole.
I think we've switched, like there's been times where, like for our 2019 album, we wrote the exact amount of songs that we needed. Nothing was cut. Like it was all put on there. And we didn't have like an extensive demoing process. So it was literally like jam it in a room, record it on your phone, and then show up to the studio and record it. Which a lot of people do and works for them. I think we probably like the album suffered a little bit for that just because we were still living in different states and stuff at that time too. So like U2 Will Rest has very different, I don't remember if we talked about this on the last episode, but it has very different like guitar tones for that reason. Like Preston's just like super high gain, like emo tone, I guess. And Aslan's tone is just like a lot cleaner and more kind of subdued. So like just stuff like that resulted as like not planning as well, which like it gives it its own character, I guess, in a way.
It definitely has its own character. Like
Yeah.
listening back to it now, it's like, okay, there's parts of this that are funny to me, but it's just because of like the process of what it was and my relation to it.
But yeah, I think we've tried a lot of different ways. Like there's things that I've just written and basically sent to the band, and then we've like adapted it.
I mean, that was Wrath.
Mhm.
Like you,
Wrath was an acoustic demo.
Yeah,
at
3
first, wasn't
a.m.
it?
depression
Yeah.
in a basement acoustic demo that I sent in the summer to the band because we needed a new opener for the album. The original opener didn't fit anymore stylistically, and we needed something like a lot darker and more like brooding. And so I wrote that and sent it to him at like 4 a.m. when I finished it.
Yeah.
And then we met and I was like, so it's going to be this, but it'll have like blast beats in it.
Just
And
imagine the blast beats. They're not there yet. Yeah, we love any album that like has some blast beats. Yeah, that's scratches in a certain itch. So
You got to have a little tasteful blast beating in there.
oh yeah.
Cue
Not
Donnie
every
DeVito.
I guess not every album needs it. Like, I don't think Explosions in the Sky needs blast beats, but well,
I think
I would
I
be
think
curious.
they could make that cool.
I think they
I
can make
think that'd
that
be
cool.
sick.
I don't
Oh, yeah.
necessarily need it.
Songs About Jane would slap with blast beats.
I mean, it would be vastly better than anything that band has done in like a decade. So, but they are making way more money than me. So who's
I
really
mean-
winning?
for now.
For your next Adam Levine. Cool. Yeah. So with
What a line.
Tweet it, tag him.
Put it on a
I've already gotten
Coming for your
banned from
throne.
Twitter for tweeting directly at people with threats. So they're all elected politicians, not even musicians. So I'm not ashamed of it, but it's annoying when
They
you
got to put that in a different category
Yeah.
on Twitter.
man. It's like I'm in a different state. I can't actually kill Joe Manchin.
You
I just
gotta-
really want
I
to.
can't actually.
We need to put in a rule where if you just put hashtag roast at the end, it doesn't count.
or like the slash like JK or like slash
Yeah.
non-serious like the kind of
/S.
yeah. I don't know what the word for that is. Like those kind of like little text shorthands. Anyways, so with kind of just once the album started taking shape, once the kind of initial batch of songs started to maybe kind of germinate a little bit, were you, I mean, and maybe this is something you already kind of touched on, was just the benefit of proximity, like the band actually being together and like not separated by as much distance. When you actually were in like a room together and actually like kind of starting with these songs beyond just like maybe anything you'd written that like on your own, which is like lyrics and guitar or any drums, anything you've done, or any other individual like guitar parts, so on. When you're in the room together, was that process pretty distinct from this is kind of continuing from last time? I'm sorry, losing my train of thought. Was that pretty distinct from how you'd approached even some of the last EPs and like the last couple songs, just like really zoned in, I guess? Was that something that was pretty noticeable, or was it still kind of, it took a little bit of time for you to kind of notice and to kind of take stock of like, okay, this is what we're doing? Did that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've answered a lot. What do you guys think?
I mean, I'll comment on the previous question, saying like this is definitely the most different a recording process has been for me, because of the fact that we had that like pretty much entire month of December, just like focusing on what are the drum parts going to sound like, what's it going to feel like, going through that entire process, and then live tracking everything later. That was the first time that had been done, like for any of the recording projects that I've been. And then I will say, like, for the month of January, when like the 3 and or 4 of you were locked, actually, or not locked physically, but like in a room for about a 2-week period, just like doing literally everything. I've never had that experience as well. And like, I only was there a couple of days, but.
Well, how it was different for me, like just coming from a bunch of different, like I've played in too many bands at this point, much like Ben, and everyone does it a little differently. But a lot of my bands in the past, it was usually 1, maybe 2 songwriters, and it was all done in the box. Like the ideas were put onto a DAW and then sent to everybody. And yeah, they might get tweaked here or there in little bits, usually more drums than anything, but like the song stayed the same for the most part. And how we do it, or at least how we did it for the album, was jam it in a room, get a recording, take that recording, put it into a DAW, demo it out fully. And even when we had those like actual recordings, we still planned on, like, we gave ourselves 2 weeks for the sole purpose of we're going to go through these songs while we're recording and make more changes and just kind of build upon the framework that we've set for ourselves. So there was multiple rounds of revision the entire time. Like we never really kind of were like, okay, this is, I mean, there are a couple songs that didn't change a ton. Like
you listen back to it and you're like, okay, this is pretty close to what we want it to sound like, versus like, okay, how can we improve this? How do we want to modify this?
There's really
at all?
very few songs that stayed completely. I mean, Windows stayed relatively the same, at least rhythm wise. I know your solo changed
But that song
sounded like a
it got completely reworked before we went in. Yeah.
sounded like a weird Arcade Fire
for the most
song.
part, I don't think a lot of them changed drastically. It was like, here's the bass work, we tweak some things here and there in them, but like I know, But I Can Carry You. Drum wise, I know that one changed a lot, and that
You're
was,
welcome.
There was a lot. There was like changes that you had made, and then I remember recording it, and we were just recording it, and we were like, yeah, that drum part is just not fitting this. And so we're like, sorry, Ben, like, can you just not do that? Wow. Like, I know there was one part like that, but like for the most part, like, I feel like once we had them demoed, like we had picked the songs for the album. I mean, yeah, they changed. I don't think they changed drastically. At least that's my viewpoint on it, is like,
I think what you were asking is like really if it was our like this is our most refined like part of like recording and production.
I think your answers have been answered, at least what I think I was trying to ask with that question. So.
I would say 100% this is the most like professionally we've ever conducted, like trying to make something, a large part of which is like due to Bailey joining and having like the resources and the knowledge to like help us do that without having to go to a studio and spend extra thousands of dollars. Because we did debate that. Like we debated, do we all go so we can all just like exist and Bailey doesn't have to like take this on and like go somewhere to record, or do we just like save that extra however much that would cost to put towards like ads or videos or whatever, since we don't have a label behind anything. And I think that was definitely the right move.
I'm glad we did not go anywhere, because I don't think I'd have a roof over my head if we went somewhere and be living with my parents.
It's expensive.
Yeah. That damn roofless house your parents have.
Yeah. It's either I don't have a home in Minneapolis or I move back to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I'd rather just not have a home in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Because
I'm not an Iowa hater, but I understand.
That's all right. We are.
I think
you have earned the right.
I think
I've just been there a few times.
Put it in a song.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was born in an Iowa hospital. I'll die in a better place.
So true. I think that's I mean, I was not to take away from the actual sentiment of the song, but I hope everyone's able to improve their lives beyond just an Iowa hospital. If they end up worse than that, it's like, oh, buddy.
Yeah.
But because it's so easy to do better than that.
It's so easy to do better than that. The bar
Even
was
like
so low.
like a Michigan hospital or like a Detroit hospital like that. That's better.
That is an improvement.
It's definitely yes.
Especially depending on where you are in Iowa, and where you guys were in Iowa. Yeah.
I think there is something in this coffee, because now I'm thinking about like if my life was like an RPG video game. And
how much experience would you have?
Somebody took me from like where I'm at now and then overwrote the save at an Iowan hospital. and then I got on the next time. I was like, fuck.
But like, it's one of those. There's definitely something in this coffee, but it's one of those things where like you don't play for like a year.
Yeah.
And then you get on, you're like, oh, I think I was at this one place. Like, I'll be all set. And then you quick load and you're like in a fucking Iowa hospital.
You're like, what DLC did they add? And it's just an alternate skin for Johnny Silverhand. Sorry.
in a St. Luke's hospital.
Still
Was
upset.
that a Cyberpunk reference?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it was.
I definitely bought that game and did not play it for very long.
That's all right.
But maybe one day.
Yeah, give it. Probably you're going to need like another 2 years from based on what I.
Yeah, it's a big one. I was like, we don't. This is not actually a gaming podcast or a Christian
What?
Guild podcast. It's a little bit of both.
That's the only two things our album is about.
I mean, when we had Early Eyes on the podcast, like the whole like first 20 minutes of the podcast before we actually like kind of like did like a clean start. We're like, we were recording this by accident, but we're actually just talking about video games. So this easily could become a video game podcast. I think it would even be somehow more niche if it was, though. So with kind of that, once the songs are really starting to develop, you're going through those revision phases. At one point in that process, did the themes and kind of like the ideas that you were trying to touch on, especially from a lyrical standpoint, since that is at least one of the most immediate ways you can kind of pick up on like thematic ideas for an album, but also just like the musical ideas. At what point in that process did those kind of overarching concepts, if at all even, start to solidify and kind of be noticeable? It's like, okay, here's kind of, I think, where we're going with this. Here are the things we're trying to talk about, trying to touch on, because Careful Gaze has always been a band that's very deliberate about that. I've always, like, when you're making a song about something, like, it's not like in a non-nuanced way, but it's very, like, you're very clear. The band is very clear. It's like, okay, this is a song about this, or here's what we're trying to talk about with this song or with this project. Yeah, so talk a little bit about that.
Early summer of 2021, I would say, we had mostly narrowed down kind of like what the surviving songs were going to be from the list that we had created. And there were a few that like maybe thematically didn't make as much sense. And there's a few like detours from kind of like the main topic, but it still like works things in. Like an example would be the album as a whole is like about grief and death and how different people respond to that and how it affects you in different ways and how other people's responses affect you. And there's like a few songs like Default Days that on the surface are more like not about that. It's just kind of about like being a band and getting stuck in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and like Preston's Kemper getting painted by a band that played before us while we were backlined.
I will never forget hearing you sing, like, because I listen to the lyrics, but like at a certain point, like
They all just sound like Gideon lyrics to you at
yeah,
a certain
exactly.
point.
Yeah. I was like, man, that's some unnecessary swearing, my guy. And I'll never forget Gabe recording the line, like sitting side stage, whatever the line is.
No, you got to quote it.
No, I don't remember it.
Big fan.
Side stage with an amp covered in paint.
Yes. I'm sitting there watching like Stranger Things season 2 on my laptop as Bailey and Gabe are recording vocals, and Gabe says that and my mind just explodes because like, oh my God. Yes.
Oh, like while that song is about something different, there's still like pieces of kind of like grief and stuff worked in from like things that happened while like someone finding out that a loved one had died, like while we were on the road. So like there's things that are worked in there. So I think that when I kind of like started to realize what the album was about was like in the summer, and that's when we took the initial track that opened the album, which was very much thematically still fitting, and like we rewrote it for Wrath to kind of like usher in like what we're going to talk about basically. That's when it solidified for me in terms of like lyrics. And then I think like sound wise was probably around the same time, like because I think right around that same time was when we wrote Wrath together, and we redid the songs The Park and Made from Windows to make them kind of like darker sounding. Because before, the Made from Windows and The Park had a lot more like of an indie vibe to it. Like I said, it kind of Made from Windows sounded like even more like a weird Arcade Fire song than it does like now to me. Yeah.
And love that song. I'm intrigued by Arcade Fire version, like the Arcade Fire edit.
So you know Rebellion Lies. So you know how this is like some music nerd shit for a second, but you know how it like changes key between like the verse and choruses and back and forth from the minor or the major to the minor. So I wanted to do that on a song. So with The Park, it was like that, where it was like in one key and then it went to the major version of that minor and then switched back and forth. And Preston was like, "This is stupid," and was so mad. And I was like, "No, we gotta just like let's figure it out." And we demoed it like that. So there is a demoed version where it switches keys. And then when we like heard what the rest of the album sounded like, it didn't make sense to do it anymore. So we were like, okay, let's just kind of. And it was again very much more like upbeat sounding, like had like a more of like an indie rock flair to it. And so we took it and kind of just like darkened it up and slowed it down a little bit and made it sadder. Took out the key change.
And that was what it needed. Sometimes you don't know in the moment, but you look back like, this is better.
Yeah.
For each of you, this is a question for everybody, but also I'm wondering what the kind of overall goal was. What was the band's kind of core goal, the core thing you were trying to accomplish with this album? And what was something each of you wanted to accomplish just as a musician, as a songwriter, as a performer? I think this will be interesting, especially with Ben and Bailey coming in later in the fold, at least kind of with the writing process. I'm very interested to hear all of your perspectives on that. But also, again, talking just about how deliberate the band is. And once you were locking into those like thematic and those sonic ideas, like what were that kind of overarching goal? Like if there really was one beyond just make an album that you're proud of, which is enough. It doesn't need to be more than that.
I think my main goal was to really just kind of put my best work forward. I really tried to incorporate a lot of dynamics into this album. Being in like, metal bands and punk bands, you're 127 the whole time. It's it. But for this project, I really wanted to try and get creative and try to, use the things that I've, learned over the 20 years that I've been playing drums. Is just like, incorporate dynamics. You can do it. You can do it. And, I think it turned out really well. I'm really proud of the work that I did, and I'm super happy with the result. And it's like for a lot of the previous recordings that I've had, there's always been like, maybe like one song or one part where I'm just like, I wish I could change that now. For this, I don't feel that as much. Yeah, that is a good feeling.
I guess for this album, and like for everything we create, but specifically for this, I wanted to create like a sound, because like Gabe does all the lyrics, and like I want to create musically what he does with his lyrics, like have like the music like in a way like speak to people as well when writing. And like with everything we create, I don't want people to be all like, oh, Careful Gaze, they sound like this, they sound like this band or this band. Like I wanted it to be like Careful Gaze, they sound like Careful Gaze. Like there's not a band that you could be all like, oh, Careful Gaze and this band, they sound very similar. I know when we were in Duluth, I called us Diet Thrice. Which
They're kind of their own diet now, in a way.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
Sorry, Thrice.
Right.
But it's like one of those things where like musically, every time we create something, but like specifically for this album, like I wanted it to be like Careful Gaze sounds like Careful Gaze. There's not another band that I can closely tie them with.
Mm-hmm.
They're their own thing. They're doing something that like isn't being done, or like everyone's doing something that's been done, but like just like a little bit more set apart to like set apart from all that, but and also just evoke the emotions I feel when listening to Gabe's music or his lyrics through like the instrumentation of it all, like coming across that way. So not only do you get the gut-wrenching sad lyrics, you just get like the sad emotional guitar person also playing behind it all. Like
It's part of the package. It's all
Yeah,
one kind of
and
unified experience,
for sure,
unified intent.
yeah, I don't know, yeah, make people feel something, good, bad, whatever you want. Just feel something while listening to it.
That total long shot, but that reminded me when I did improv comedy sports in high school. The way you would get a point is any noise that they make, whether it's like a laugh or like a groan of disgust, anything that is a response that you are evoking is a point. And so kind of like just you want to make people feel something regardless. I mean, you want it to be positive, ideally, but
Yeah.
at least making people feel something, just no matter what that is.
Like-
that's kind of like the goal.
Yeah, like a lot of like looking
Long
inward.
shot comparison.
Looking inward on yourself and feeling something. I'm so sorry. I have to tangent. So you said stand-up sport?
No,
Improv comedy sports.
the
improv
best
comedy
3-word
sport.
phrase ever.
Improv
It's
comedy
improv
sport.
comedy played as a sport.
So because sport was in the title, did you need to like go to a
like, how the
doctor and
fuck?
get like a physical?
I did.
Like, they
I
have
did
to
not.
clear you?
If so, we all would have failed. But it's just like you just get points and stuff.
No,
and
this
like,
is fair. You just said sport, and I was like, how funny would it be if the school was like, all right, so like to play this sport, you have to go
like
to
we
a
had to
doctor.
pay money because it's high school, and you're like,
Yeah.
it's like, what's your participation fee? We don't need to get into the weeds with improv comedy. That's not too surprising when I'm in a room, which is not something I'm super happy about. But we're good. Continuing on with the answers. Love to hear both of your thoughts as well.
So I'm going to kind of feed off of what Preston said. So this was my first time recording an album. Like I've been doing production work for like in some way, shape or form for the last 4 or 5 years, whether it's just my own demos or recording tech death. I've done a lot of that. My main goal was to kind of capture what I knew Careful Gaze was, having been a fan before being in the band, and just take it as far as I could get it. And that just involved like capturing that emotion was very important to me, because I feel like a lot of music nowadays in all genres is too polished at times, where it's too edited. There's just too much going on. You lose kind of the clarity in the message just because they're trying to boast it up to be this massive thing. And while I still wanted that massive, huge sound that invokes emotion, I wanted it to sound raw. I wanted it to sound intimate. I wanted it to be as close to seeing us live without losing that like that sheen on top of it. Because again, like this band like thrives a lot on the emotional content and that kind of like gut wrenching, like being able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Being able to relate to what's being told. And I didn't want to lose that in context. So that was very, very important for me.
I will say, to go off of what Bailey said, that I think like we haven't had as Careful Gaze, like I don't think we've really had like a bad recording experience by any means. Like when we've tracked something, there's been very different ones. Like we've tracked stuff ourselves. I've tracked vocals in my closet, like, but so this isn't to like disparage anybody that we worked with before, any like way that we've done things. But I think Bailey definitely, like from being in the band and knowing our music, like he just had like the most picture in his mind of like kind of what I was going for with vocals and stuff out of like anybody we've worked with. And so like him and I were able to very like easily sync up and be like just making decisions of like, how do we want this to sound? And there were things where I was too hard on myself with, where I was like, I don't like this crack or this, like the way this sounded. And he was like, no, I think it'll go towards the like rawness of it. And then that ended up being some of like my favorite stuff on the album. Like there was one part where I was like, this sounds like Neon Trees, I don't like it. And he was like, no, we're keeping it.
We're gonna sound like Neon Trees, and you're gonna like it.
Yeah. And then it was Made from Windows, has a Neon Trees style vocal delivery for literally one word. But I think for me,
Is it Smoke?
No.
Okay.
Nope. No, that's Billy Idol.
Okay.
Is it Smoke? I think for me, I wanted to create something that felt like beholding a large unknown thing in the distance. Like when you listen to it, when you see the cover, when you just like Like just that feeling of like there's something off, and like I don't know, just creating kind of like feelings of like wonder and like I don't know, just all of the emotions that come with losing people and like dealing with unknown things and scary things, and create something that felt like not just like we slapped a bunch of songs onto like one digital collective on Spotify, but something.
It's not just a playlist of
Right.
songs that
Right.
happen to be recorded by the same people.
We don't do that thing that like the larger artists do where when your album comes out, you create a playlist with the songs, but they're like out of order and have like your other singles mixed in and stuff. Like that shit annoys me so much.
That you just reminded me that bands do that. And
Yeah. Post Malone.
you can put me on
Oh,
the record
Post
as
does
saying
it?
this. That's
I don't
fucking
actually know.
stupid.
No.
Post.
I don't think he did it, but his label probably did.
yeah.
At
Post
some
Malone
point,
does not have the Spotify for artists.
Like he's on there just like going
he
through.
uploads the canvases himself.
Just like
Listen,
me.
I don't know. He kind of seems like the type of guy who would just be sitting in his Utah home, just like, all right, time to upload this shit.
not at all. He's too busy drinking Bud Light, man.
You haven't watched. Listen, you haven't watched enough interviews with him. Man.
Drinking Bud Light, hanging out with Fleet Foxes, just living the dream.
Oh no, I accidentally got us talking about Post Malone.
We can stop
bad.
talking about Post Malone.
We'll digress from the post talk.
divert.
Divert.
Yeah, I
Okay.
wanted to just make something that felt like a complete work and felt like it was just all very like related to each other. And
Well, I think it's nice how we recorded things too. Just like I was saying before, of kind of going in and like changing and modifying things as we went, like adding. Oh, should I say it? No one's talked about it yet, and I'm afraid if I say it, it's gonna ruin the surprise when someone finds it. Like the piano line in Flowers that's the same as in Wrath at the end, or the fact that the lead at the end of Wrath is practically the lead that's in Gemini Split, except in just kind of a different order.
Yeah, and it's funny because you wrote the lead for Wrath, and then the Gemini Split thing was kind of like.
That was in the you had a lead coming into recording, and it was a lot faster.
It was, yeah, that lead just fucking sped up over and over again. It was ridiculous.
And then we slowed it down and we were listening to it and we're like, huh,
Yeah.
weird.
And yeah, like a lot of like,
Villager noises.
Yeah.
like a lot of like weird like things like that. A lot of weird things like that happen on the album, where like Wrath and Gemini Split, like the end of Wrath just so happens to hold out perfectly into Gemini Split with all the keys and shit, and then you got like the lead at the end of Wrath. It's like there's like things like that. I was like, we never talked about this.
Almost like unintentional continuity.
Yeah, it was like we didn't talk about doing this, but it's happening, which I think just shows like how kind of like on the same page we were with everything.
We were very much like, at least I was. I know by a certain point I had kind of reached that like flow state of where like we found the vibe and we're just cruising with it.
I love that term for describing that feeling. I think it's very accurate, but it's I'm entering flow state.
I heard Misha Mansour from Periphery say it once, and now it's just my overarching goal anytime I write music is just to reach that like empty thought mindset of where it's just coming out.
where you're just hitting record and I'm just playing a MIDI keyboard and we're making these crazy.
That was different. I was just
Vangelis
disassociating by that point. I was so tired and it's just like, we've been doing this for 13 days. It's been like 100 and something hours.
Bailey
Like,
was actually just near death at that point. And meanwhile, I just have like
An angel was like actively picking you up and taking you into heaven. You're like,
I have like
all I
Death
want-
Choir 6 on the preset, and I'm just like, whoa.
all I wanted to do was play Elden Ring and smoke weed.
That
And
is
I
true.
couldn't do either. Well, that's not true. I smoked plenty of weed, but I couldn't play Elden Ring.
if only it had been on Switch, then you could have. Oh, probably good.
That would have been bad. It would have been really bad.
Can't parry for shit.
Cool. So I want to get into the nitty gritty as we alluded to, kind of continuing. We're already talking about Wrath a little bit. I'm especially interested because that feels like such a immediate album opener. And yeah, as you guys were talking about, like really wanting this to feel like a cohesive, like collection of songs, a cohesive work. As much as my external opinion can be worth something, like that was very apparent. Like even as someone who's been like listening to the band's music for like 3 years now or however long, that was very apparent. And I think that was something that comes across very clearly. Even just like with how I think like the first few songs just like kind of flow together. You're like, oh, these, I don't know, it was like just the sequencing like was just really well done. I don't know, but it felt very intentional. But with Wrath, it starts the album kind of out just very distinctly. It feels like a very good album opener. And it's interesting that originally was not on the track list at all because you just kind of wrote that song later. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what led you to want to make a new kind of song to kick the album off, to get things going, and maybe what you wanted this song to do that the other song wasn't necessarily accomplishing or was maybe lacking, for lack of a better word.
Sure. The original album opener was called Death Grid. It was either going to be Death Grid or Gemini Split. And Death Grid was like kind of sounded like a heavy My Chemical Romance, like late era My Chemical Romance song, mixed with like maybe like an Idols riff in there.
Yeah.
So it was a lot different of a vibe to like very just like aggressive right off the bat to start it off.
It was very polar opposite of what it is now.
Very, and like the reasoning for that was because we started Loud Howls like very somber and slow, and like I thought it would detract having like two back to back. Like, oh, this band, all they do is start albums or EPs off like very slow and somber, but Wrath is 1000% such a better opener.
Like different vibe because I feel like Thunder Rolled Around Their Shores, which is the opener for Loud Howls, you immediately jump into just like it's a very kind of like tender emotional song, whereas like Wrath is much more like foreboding, like you can tell just like
there's an edge to it.
Bad things are like being felt and stuff and I guess like the best way possible that you can. But so yeah, we just like kind of realized that song was just not fitting the vibe anymore. And it was very, like I mentioned, very thematically similar in the lyrics. It was completely different lyrics, but it was about the same thing. And so I was personally like having a terrible time in my life. And so I like woke up at 3 a.m. and just like went downstairs in this house that I lived in this very like sketchy, unfinished, like partially flooded basement, and just got out my acoustic guitar. It was like my dad's Guild from the 70s that he gave me. And so I just like got it out and started playing like that opening guitar line on it. It was probably actually like really funny to like if somebody had been watching, they'd be like, what the fuck is this? But yeah, once I wrote that and I like the lyrics kind of just like flowed out, we were just like we knew there was no other place for it than like the start of the album. So yeah, that's when we kind of like switched over to that.
Yeah. Moving right along with a Gemini Split. I only had like a couple notes for some of the songs. Mostly just want to hear y'all's thoughts. But this felt like another, like especially maybe it's just because of the placement of the track list next to Made from Windows, which is the lead single. The first thing I wrote was, oh yeah, this is a single, baby. Like, it's just like, this is clearly like such like, okay, it's such like an upbeat, catchy song, just like really hits like you want a single to hit. I feel like Gemini Split was kind of in that same vein, where like just maybe a little bit more upbeat, very like catchy while still being part of the same album, kind of same thematic vein. But yeah, talk a little bit about that song, how it kind of came together, and what your thoughts on it are.
It was in the running to be the first single. I can't remember exactly which ones we were choosing between.
Teach.
Was it That Teach and Made from Windows?
Default Days.
Default Days is one.
Yeah.
But we didn't necessarily want to have like Default Days doesn't sound as much like the rest of the album.
Yeah,
It's new
or
metal.
Would have been an interesting single.
Or as Distorted Sound called it, jangly new metal.
I'm sorry, I have so much fucking beef with that.
But yeah, so Gemini Split definitely was in the running, and that was one of the earlier ones that we wrote, like Preston Aslan and I together. And just like I was very inspired by the imagery of like traveling through space basically for it. Like, so it's about a lot of things, but it has like some space travel like metaphors in there, and just like it's supposed to kind of like evoke the feeling of like adventure and like going into like an unknown part of your life. And I'm trying to think of like any specific fun things about it. I think one thing is like originally we had it playing straight through in the first verse, and then we decided during like demoing it out the second time to have that pause where it like holds the chords, and then we say, I say we've come a long way from Dear Bones in the Woods, and we were like debating a little bit on whether or not to have that pause in there. Like, is it too long? Is that going to be weird? And I think honestly that makes the song, like, it feels like that point is like when the album's officially like, all right, we're going.
Yeah,
like,
those hits are just like, yeah, they come in so strong.
Mm-hmm. So that was, I think, it originally could have been an opener, but it ended up being like, we want this to be like the first kind of like full song that doesn't feel like an intro track. And so it's kind of got everything that you're going to hear on the album.
It's like a second opener almost, where it's like it's not the opener, but it's like still kicking things off.
Yeah. Or like if we were one of those bands that did the thing, it would be like, you know, Wrath would be like Dead Family 1, Wrath, and then Gemini Split would be like Dead Family 2, Gemini Split, and it would be like the Arcade
like
Fire
the prog
Wii
metal thing, like-
yeah. Oh yeah, we went to very different places. But yes.
I think it was. I think it kind of helps set the moods of the album. Those two songs, you kind of get not the full range of what you're going to hear, but it kind of like Wrath kind of helps set the more like dark thematic, like over the top mood. Gemini Split's more of the kind of riffy, groovy, like
The Vessel.
Oh, they can sing choruses.
Yeah. They chug.
I think the only reason for me that we didn't use it as a single was that there's like so much more going on in it that I was like a little bit worried that it would almost be like too much, because there's like the kind of like swung thing, and then like the kind of like first breakdown, and then it goes into like the alternate tempo.
Yeah.
Then
like,
we rip off counterparts.
yeah.
Good band to rip off.
Nope, that's my other band.
They're back.
That's my other band.
Little do we know you've just been just in Counterparts. Holy crap. Cool. Unless anybody else had anything to add about Gemini Split, we can talk about Made from Windows. Already kind of touched on that. Just very immediate song, and very just connects very easily, very instantly, which is always, I think, a strength for a single, no matter what kind of music it is. Yeah, talk about writing that song and kind of what led you down the rabbit hole to make that.
That one originally had like kind of like a chugging snare beat, and like
Mom, I'm Coming Home-esque vibes from Ozzy Osbourne.
it was just a lot more like lighter and kind of like indie pop punk vibes, like we mentioned. And so then we darkened it up like we also mentioned. And that one was actually I had a solo thing for a while called Piano Stairs, and I was writing a full length for that. And that was that was like the opening song on it. Some of the lyrics. And then like I kind of combined pieces of that I liked with new pieces and brought it over. And then we just wanted it to be super, super driving the whole time, and like not let up, but also not be like heavy per se, like just kind of be like melodic. So Preston worked on the guitar solo for that for like 2 weeks in between the first time he tracked it and the last time he tracked it and recorded.
I've talked a lot of shit about guitar solos as a guitar player.
Yeah.
And I hate Wes.
You hate me?
No.
Oh, damn.
There was a comma in there. I hate
know.
the fact that we released a single with a goddamn guitar solo in it. But it makes sense to be the single. I just hate that it's like Careful Gaze, single, guitar solo, really? But that's just my own personal hatred towards guitar solos.
Your own personal biases.
But we did it, and now we don't have to have one again if we don't want.
Yeah, that's fair. But
Next time it'll be 2 guitar solos.
yeah.
Harmonized.
It'll just be me and Bailey just
Get yourself a double neck, brother.
Fire and flames just harmonizing. Yeah. No. It was
that
fun.
ain't it, Chief.
It was a fun one to rewrite. Happier with the direction that it is now. And that has some of like my favorite lyrics in it too on the album. So it's a little fun fact.
Fucking hate those lyrics, dude.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. Thank you. I think the things that Ben did on the drums were very like subtle changes, but like very cool. And like a lot of it's on the choruses where you like changed stuff up from what I had.
No, this was a lot of fun. I think the like kind of like, yeah, the verse structure is all that's very driving. And then when it gets to the chorus, there's like kind of a breath. And then it comes into that just chorus part where you can like really bang your head to it. I had a lot of fun like breaking up those rhythms and trying to get creative. And then, yeah, like the whole music video shoot process was just like really awesome. That was the only other thing I was going to comment about that song is just like, yeah, the experience of doing the video was really, really cool. Yeah, shout out Elbow Juice, Adam Foster Jacobs.
Oh yeah. Let's move on to Teach. This one I noted kind of just, it feels kind of like a lyric that summarizes a lot of, not even just with this album, and maybe I'm just reading into it too much, but the I'm gonna die in a better place, just like that half of the Iowan Hospital lyric. I feel like that kind of captures a lot of kind of just, that feels like a good summarization of kind of what Careful Gaze is going for. It's just like through it all, like we're gonna get to a better place, even if it's just to die there. Like that, it was a little bittersweet, but it's still kind of hopeful and doesn't like discount kind of the shit, you know, everything, all the hard stuff that came prior to that. But yeah, that's also just, it's a banger. So let's talk a little bit about that one.
It's my favorite to play live for sure.
Ooh.
It's just the energy of it. I also get to feel like a metalcore guitarist again and play some chugs, which is always a good time.
I love it because it's like heavy. It's like probably one of the heavier songs like Careful Gaze has released total like in our total catalog, but it's like still got this that like really melodic like guitar like chord vibe to it. And then like when it hits the dissonant part at the end, I think that's like so sick. And so yeah, we got to play around with that a lot. I had a lot of like kind of weird influences for the song vocally, like from things to like Idols to there's this band called Funeral for a Friend that I used to listen to a lot, and like I wanted to do like some harmonies in the vein of that. And I also, this album in a whole, as a whole, I was experimenting with like not always having to try to sing at like the top of my range, like where I can, but like going lower and trying to like actually stretch myself to like lower parts. So this is an example of that, like the breakdowns happening, and I wouldn't have normally just been like, I'm going to sing a low, just like vocal line right here, but I did. And I don't know, I think like that kind of stuff's cool. Lyrically, I think like it's kind of it's one of those things where it's like a personal kind of, you know, it's about moving on from like where you're from and like kind of dealing with people that have never moved out of that and people that have like are intentionally keeping themselves like ignorant and like hateful, and just like the relationship between those two. But what's cool is like a lot of people have still related to it, even though it's like kind of some specific lyrics like that I was born in Iowa Hospital. Like some of the people in our main kind of group, like our Discord group, are like, I'm not from Iowa, but I really like resonate with that in my own state where I'm from. And like, I just think that's cool. Like that stuff's awesome.
Oh yeah. Cool. Next on, we got Sister Wraith. Maybe I'm just feeling this because it's the longest song and it's easy to kind of like, I've been poisoned by enough music journalism brain. I'm like, song that's kind of longer than the rest and in the middle of the album, is that the centerpiece? But it sits very nicely. It sits kind of in the kind of middle section of the album, kind of starting that off. It was also the second single, which I think it's always a kind of a bold choice when like one of the, I guess, I don't say like out there, but I guess one of the more like complicated songs, one of the just really captures a lot of what the band does in a way that maybe like is very distinct from Made from Windows, where like, okay, this is just like catchy enough and upbeat enough that just like it, like I was saying, it just feels very naturally like a single. Whereas Sister Wraith, like that feels like an album cut, and just like I was saying, fits very nicely where it kind of is in the sequence. So yeah, talk a little bit about writing and recording that one and all your thoughts.
Sister Wraith is like that song's the ending of the first half of the album. Like we set it up so that Flowers is the center point. Yeah, that's the actual middle.
On the tape, it's like the end of side A is Flowers.
So it was a nice breakup too, just because again, there's a lot going on in the album. Just sonically, we go from stuff like Gemini Split and Teach Sister Wraith's got kind of its own vibe compared to the rest of them. It's a lot more dreamy. It's a lot more post-rocky. And it's always been a different song, but we didn't really expand on kind of the heavy, dreamy aspect of it until we were in the studio recording it. And we started adding all the synth layers, and we completely rewrote the ending. It was completely that was not the ending we came into the studio with.
I mean, did we ever have an ending for that?
We knew that it was going to go back to the vocals and like fade out.
Yeah.
It was going to drop in some way. That's the only thing that stayed consistent from it. But in the initial ending, it kept playing the guitar line through it. I'm pretty
it had
sure.
that. Yeah, and then it was like a 10 p.m. end of the day.
It was the
We're
last
all-
thing we were recording for the day.
All very tired, and that's what we pulled out.
That's the only guitar I play on the album.
I thought you
is
played
that
another one.
ending. No, just that.
Just that?
I'm pretty sure. I don't remember. That's the
remember.
only
That's
time
the
I
only thing
remember.
you doing.
Yeah, it's the only time I remember picking up a guitar and recording anything.
Because Bailey was in so much of like producer mode for it. Like Preston was the one executing most of the stuff so that he could focus on like getting it tracked.
It was good teamwork. Good teamwork.
Ben, this is one where like Ben definitely spiced the drums up a lot, and like what Aslan and Ben do together between like the bass and the drums is it actually I think was like an accident because you had like changed the pattern and then tracked it.
We
differently.
were recording and you came in and said, I don't like the kick pattern. And I remember at first that really stressed out Aslan because he had something written.
Yeah.
But you changed it because originally when we had pre-pro'd it, it was a little bit more all over the place.
It was
The
a lot busier. Yeah.
The pattern didn't repeat much. It was very chaotic's not the right word, but busy is a good word for it. And you simplified it, and then Aslan just kind of lined up what he was doing, and
Yeah.
it works so much better.
Yeah. This one was a lot of fun to do. It really allowed me to, again, like be able to focus on dynamics, focus on, some different stuff. And yeah, I think it turned out really well. I think the overarching, climax of the song, like how when everything comes in this big moment, it's just like super powerful. So, yeah, this one's definitely like a sleeper favorite of mine.
There's a somewhat older, obscure kind of emo band called Joan of Arc. I guess I don't know how obscure, but they have a song called Punk Kid, and it oddly influenced the song for me. It doesn't sound like anything like it really, other than it's like kind of sustained, held out vocals over like a weird rhythm section that is like you wouldn't necessarily like picture them together. So that was like a huge influence for me vocally. Like I wanted to do a song because so much Careful Gaze is so like full lyrically, like there's so much happening in such little time. I wanted something that was like much more like kind of a sonnet almost, where it was like minimal words, but they're still very like they hit very hard and like accomplish what they need to accomplish.
Yeah, unexpected Tim Kinsella influence on the Careful Gaze album.
Whoops.
Oops, all Kinsella. Yeah, moving on to Flowers. The midway point, very clearly, it sounds like intended. Is it where it is? This kind of like spoken word interlude. When did that idea start to solidify? Whether it's just the idea of wanting to kind of divide things with an interlude, try to see if like what you could come up with kind of more interstitial track, and also just the writing for. Because I know in the past you've taken like some literary references and anything that isn't sung, it's easy to be like, oh, this is different. But it's still like I'm imagining like still the same person writing it. But what was that writing process like? Where you were writing something that you maybe did you know you weren't going to sing it, or was it always okay?
Yeah. So
Let's talk about that.
my thought process behind it. This was one of the like many songs that we wrote when we were just like writing the initial batch, and I was like, I don't know if we want a title track for this, and this was before Wrath existed, the opener. But I was like, but I'm going to make one just in case. So, and I was like, I definitely don't feel like this album, if it had a title track, that it would be like a traditional, like, here's a song, where it would be more of like a spoken word, like with some things going on. So I wrote it, and it was quite a bit longer, of a spoken word. And then we ended up cutting it. But track 10 of the album was originally going to be like a doom metal. Like it was essentially like it sounded like a heavier sleep, like a post-hardcore sleep. And we were literally like weeks out from recording and had like done pre-pro for the song and stuff. And we were just like,
it was the last one that we had to pre-pro, and me, Preston, and Ben had finished the drums for it, and we sat and listened to it, and we all just kind of sat there like, we gotta cut this one.
This ain't it.
This isn't it.
It's a really cool song, and I would even like consider using it again at some point. But in the the context of the rest of the album, it was
too much of an outlier.
It was too riffy, like just too doom. When Preston, when he like wrote the riff, he literally screamed, "I'm sleep."
Literally, we were sitting in the practice space, and it was just like, it's one of those things where like at practice, I'll just be like, we're waiting to start something, and I'll just like sit there and like play whatever because I'm bored.
And then I get excited.
Trying anything. And then Gabe's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. It's just a riff. He's like, okay.
Pulls up Google Docs
And then
grabs lyric reference.
Yeah, he's like, all right. And then we played it, and I was just like, just yelling, I am sleep. Because like, what is this?
So we were like, this song needs to go. Like, which after we're done, I'll play you a little bit of it because it'll probably be really funny to hear. But and you'll probably understand why we did what we did. So I was like, okay, well, what about then like having like kind of a midpoint interlude of the album? Because I didn't. Something about it, I didn't want it to just be 10 tracks. Like I wanted to kind of have the 11 track thing. And that was what we did when the first full length came out, was have 11. So cut that one, redid Flowers, very much wanted it to kind of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Mandy, but okay. Well, there's a really interesting like monologue from like this cult leader in the movie that I kind of was just like influenced by and wanted it to have sort of that like eerie, otherworldly like sound and feeling to it. So I just like, I did the vocal kind of like distortion on my own, and then we sent it like that to be mixed like with the independent tracks.
At most, we added on to it in the studio, but a lot of what Flowers is from the demos.
Yeah,
it's just the straight demo waves.
Yeah.
We
No
didn't
click
re-record
track.
anything. Yeah, no click.
Have fun covering that one.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Flowers.
Cool. Next one, I'm very excited to talk about Default Days with OK Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out
Shout out
Chris. Very excited to see both of y'all play our little gig in a month.
That's going to be so fun.
August 18th. Google it.
The Treasury.
Yeah, Careful Gaze will be there, among others.
I love G.
But yeah, it's cool to just hear Chris kind of come in at the end of the song. I know he's like posted online about like wanting to collaborate with other like non-rappers. So I don't know if that was maybe the genesis of this, or if it was always just kind of like a conversation where Careful Gaze, Chris, everybody wanted to work together, just talk about how he kind of came in the fold, and also kind of what it was like just bringing. He's like, I think it sounds like also maybe like on the recording side of things and like the mixing and everything, the only really outside kind of collaborator that came in with the album. It's like the album was very like made internally with primarily just the Careful Gaze folks. Yeah, talk about like just kind of the one collaborator, just like bringing him in, and just for this one kind of very distinct moment where it's like, okay, this is a very different voice. This is a very unique song on the track list even.
I don't think we've ever been like a feature band. Like the two features we've had are OK Nice and then Errol.
Yeah.
And both of those, like, I could not be more stoked on. Like, so far with what our like historical feature list, I'm so happy with it. Like,
not 2 for 2.
Yeah, because Errol did amazing, and like I love that track. And then Chris did amazing. We became friends kind of just like through the internet in 2020 when we were all just locked inside, and then it ended up like in the fall he started sending me just like demos from Have You Tried Being Happy. He was just like, what do you think of this track? What do you think of this track? And we ended up hanging out, and then eventually he asked me to be on his album. And so we kind of just agreed that we would just do like a feature trade type situation where I did his song, and then I was like, you want to rap over one of ours? Because we had written this one. Default Days was written later in the process. It was like Bailey was a part of the writing in the room of that song. and he played just kind of that like easy core riff that Chris raps over, and I was like, I just don't know what I would do for this, like what I would do over this. So maybe we have something kind of like unexpected come in there. So it worked out. Chris came in and tracked it in the studio with us, and yeah, what he wrote was like perfect vibe, perfect capturing of the vibe. Yeah, you guys have anything else to add to that?
That one's fun. I like playing that one a lot. It brings me back to like, kind of like a bit of a metalcore, easy core, kind of style of drumming.
It's got an easy core riff in it.
Chris has a lot of those roots of like doing heavier music in his past, so he's very much into that style, and you can tell like it shows, like he has fun with it. And when he did it at our release show, like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
he got to kind of go into like rock star okay nice mode.
I saw some of the photos.
Yeah.
It's like more so than like even any of the other like shots from the night. I was like, oh, that's so fucking cool. And I think there's some of Mel's shots, which are unsurprising.
Yeah, Mel is so good.
But yeah,
shout out Mel.
Shout out Mel.
Shout out.
Mel
We've never met, but you're a cool photographer.
Mel _ till death on Twitter. Mel _ MLPS MPL. Wow, my brain just shut down.
Minneapolis.
MPLS.
Like abbreviated.
on Instagram. Photos are so good.
Very cool. Cool. Moving on to the park. Share a little bit about that one. And kind of continuing down the same lane. Just what was the creation like? What were some of the kind of highlights, lowlights, just moments that stood out from it? So on and so forth.
That one was one that got reworked after the fact. And that was also the song that really kind of got us set with adding a lot more textural stuff in the music, like when it comes to synths and software instruments. And like the end of that song has so much going on. There's a string quartet going on. There's a synth trumpet in there that kind of gets blended in with everything. That one was fun just because I think it also helped establish the vibe before we went into recording of just kind of what all we want to do with the rest of the music, like what other elements we want to add in besides ourselves. And yeah, I was a fan of recording that one.
I already kind of talked about the Rebellion Lies style key change that we took out of it and reworked it. So I guess my main thing that I would just speak to on this one is like the lyrics is like, this is my favorite song on the album. And I think that's kind of like how it works with bands a lot of the times is like your favorite, and at least mine ends up being one of the ones that's like later and not like one of the first ones that people maybe think of when they think of the album. It's a very like emotional song. It's a very tender song. It's about, kind of like I grew up as a only child. And so I had very few friends, and there was this specific park. Yeah. There's a specific park that I would go to a lot to kind of just like seek solace, and a lot of core things in my childhood happened there, like from relationships starting to relationships ending to just walking around with one of my friends. And a lot of the song is kind of about me and one of my friends kind of just like figuring out who we were growing up and stuff, and him essentially like growing up being gay in a very tough, conservative, like not supportive home, and just like having that friendship was really like important to me and like meant a lot to me, and I'm very thankful for it. And like I'm doing his wedding now and at the end of this year, and I'm so stoked. So like we've stayed friends, and like I sent him the song when it was done and everything. So that one's really personal to me, and just like kind of it's basically about surviving, just like in the midst of all of like what the rest of the album's about. It's just kind of about like trying to outlive all of the shit that happens to you growing up, and then like when you get out and it not stopping, and you just kind of have to like keep going forward. But that has like some of the most intense lyrics, I think, like the spoken word part at the end.
I get to scream on this one live.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah, we recorded, and there's like when it drops out into like the second part of the song, we wanted it to have kind of like just a very like punk or post-punk feel. So that was literally the last thing we recorded on the album, is like Bailey set up the condenser mic, and I just like stood across the room and he hit record because I knew I was just gonna like shred myself, and then I just screamed "Stay in the Park" as loud as I can. Like we had just finished a which we'll talk about a spoken word later on the album. And then like I was like, all right, the last thing, hit record, stay in the park. And then now I just walk up to Ben and hold the mic over the drum set, and he screams it and I just hope that the mic doesn't like fall off.
That's only happened in rehearsal. But I need to enunciate the K in park better so it doesn't sound like "say in the park."
Well, on the live,
Heat of the moment. I don't think anyone's like his diction was lacking.
Yeah.
they're on the live,
you're
the
like a punk
release
show.
show, the release show audio. I listened to it. It sounds like you're just from the East Coast because it's just like stay in the park. Sounds like Incendiary or something.
Just become like aggressively from like just like from Boston or something.
Yeah. That's that true RP.
This one had the worst initial mix of the album. We like the shout out the Roger who mixed it, like great. He did a great job, but it was just like for whatever reason the song just we got it and we were like, what the fuck is this? Like this is bad. And then
This
like
is the one where the drums were off by like half a measure.
Oh yeah.
that was one
I just remember
somehow-
listening to it at
yeah.
work, and like I got 30 seconds in, and I was like, I'm not listening to the rest of this.
Yeah.
that was funny.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of feeling when you're like you get a mix back. You're like, this is so far from what we wanted it to be.
But now it sounds great.
But yeah, end result, we worked through it. That's good. Next, The House You Raised In. Talk a little bit about that one. Lyrics, songwriting. Where was that kind of in the process?
That was another pretty early one, and I wrote that one on drums as the 3-piece, which I think is why it's as weird as it is, because I've always been a fan of like switching time signatures and stuff like that. So it goes from like 4 to 6 and ends in 6. And because of like, and again, music nerd moment, so I'm sorry, skip ahead 45 seconds if you're not a music nerd.
You're listening to a hyper-focused niche local music
Yeah,
podcast.
you
If
sit
you're not
here
in
and
it for this, like, what are you doing?
You too, Sherman.
Yeah,
you're
you too,
going to
Sherman.
want to hear this.
Fuck around and find out.
we had the click was in 4, and when it switches to the 6, it's like the 4 creates a polyrhythm in the 6/8, and so we like didn't program it to change or anything. So I was like singing and playing in 6/8 while listening to a click in 4/4.
Very challenging.
And
Yeah, I could not do that.
my brain
1, 2,
just about broke.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
And then he tracked it like that. Ben still tracked it like that. We didn't actually change the click until we started playing live, just so it didn't completely destroy it.
Yeah.
But that's my, I guess that and like the song is just kind of about like growing up in a abusive home, like an abusive home environment and overcoming that.
That's another one where we scrapped kind of an original idea from the demo in the middle and rewrote that whole middle section while we were recording, which I'm much more of a fan of now. I didn't mind what we had before, but I'm glad it changed because it's a lot cooler now.
I think the ending of that song, how like it kind of changes from that 6/8 feel, and then it goes to like a duple pop 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 pop. Like that whole ending, I think was really 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 cool.
It's my favorite on the
Counterparts
album.
rip
That's
off.
your favorite? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you've done all the favorites because so yours is House You Raised In, yours is The Park. What are your favorites? And if we know Aslan, I said that so like Narnian. I was like Aslan, totally unintentional. But if we know what his favorite song is on the album, just brief tangent. If we don't know, he's not here. That's what he gets.
Oh,
He doesn't get to share his favorite song.
That's really hard.
We can come back to that. It's okay.
I'd probably say not tunneled, but I'll talk more about that
We'll get there
later.
in a minute. Yeah,
I'd say Park.
Park. Okay.
The Park is
Cool.
my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, unless anybody else had anything to add with House You Raised In on to But I Can Carry You.
Prague.
Unintentional Lord of the Rings reference?
Intentional.
Yeah, very intentional. Okay. Good. 'Cause, like, this is an accident. Like, I'm here for it, but I hope it's intentional. Cool. Yeah, just talk a little bit about that one.
When we started that was the only song I didn't have lyrics ready for when we were writing as the trio. And I was like, what is this? August Burns Red shit. And I hated it so much. But we wrote it, and it's another one where because I was playing drums, we did a lot of weird, like there's parts in 9/4 and parts in 3 and just like all that stuff. Yeah, I'll agree. I don't know if they will, but
What about
9/4 is underrated.
Now that I know what I'm playing in 9/4, it's chill.
Couldn't
It's
tell you
whatever.
the time signature. I just play the riff.
But the first time we demoed these out, I MIDI tracked all of them on like a 49 key Alesis keyboard. So like this song was terrible to do that for. So terrible. Aslan would just come out and there'd just be like tears in my eyes, just like hitting keys that made no sound for him because it was just all in my headphones. And I'd be like, I gotta get this kit quantized. So yeah, but I think like when I had never really like written a song about like losing Christianity and like altogether just like blatantly like, so that was the song. And so it just very easily flowed out. And yeah, the "But I Can Carry You" reference is just like, I think the line is always idolizing novels of sacrifice. I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. And it's just like about basically a childhood of like trying to like shoehorn everything into like the religion I was raised in, and then eventually letting go of that. And a lot of like the trauma that caused and stuff we've talked about before. So like I won't go super deep into it, but one cool little like Easter egg is way long ago, like I wrote almost like it was like my cool kid take on like a worship song. And like it was called Last Words. And so like the part in this song right before the spoken word hits is a callback to that song, but it's just used in a very different way now. And then the spoken word that it goes into after that is the last thing besides the "Stay in the Park" yell that I recorded, because I wanted to I was like, everything else I was doing like different techniques with screaming and stuff. And this part I was like, I'm just going to basically like yell as loud as I can and do this spoken word.
And that spoken word's a one take.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this whole thing where we had a weird obsession with whistle binkies on the lake, even though none of us have ever been there. And so we decided to
Say that again? Whistle Binkies?
Yeah, it's a restaurant in Rochester. Oh. And we drove by it and it became like iconic to our band's lore, even though we've never gone. And so we called One Takes Whistle Binkies in the studio.
It's still on the whiteboard.
Yep.
I still have all of our binky counts.
But you guys obviously can probably speak more to like the musical side of the song.
I wanted to write. Well, it wasn't I wanted to write. It was just I had wanted to write a song in a different tuning that wasn't like your standard like drop C tuning. And so I was like, oh, Architects does this weird thing where it's like standard D, but you take the low like E or whatever, the low C, and just like make it an octave of whatever the second string is. So technically it's in drop G.
Yeah, the two low strings are both in G, an octave apart.
Yeah, so this one was also the last one recorded on guitars because we had to restring the main guitar we were using and put like a 74 gauge on to like get it to like actually sound good. But yeah, that's basically it. It's a prog riff. It has my favorite like lead riff on it at the end to play. Big fan of that. We'll probably never play it live again, but who had it? Yeah.
I will say, I think, Ben, this is the song that, in my opinion, you definitely like saved the most out of
Yes.
just in how you like reworked it.
Yeah, the 9/4 riff. You hear it and you think that it's in like, well-known, time and or feel. But it just has this hiccup to it. And that was really a lot of fun to do. It kind of felt natural with like how the guitars were moving and like how the music was moving. And then, yeah, it gets to this like really down and dirty, like prog riff. And I was just like, oh, I've been in a prog band for like 10 years. This is right up my alley. Yeah. So like I was able to really get creative in that part and, mix it up with some modulations and do some cool stuff. So, this one was a lot of fun for me. I hope that we get to play it live again, but would understand why we wouldn't.
Across the album, like also with this song, but across the album, Ben manipulates time so much with like where he's accenting stuff. And it is my favorite thing, like to like hear on the album, be like, oh, I forgot Ben just like takes us somewhere else for 2 bars and then comes back.
way more successfully manipulate time than the Marvel Phase 4 universe.
I was gonna say I'm Doctor Strange up in this bitch.
Oh. Bruce Campbell isn't even here.
Yeah, right.
Got to get Bruce Campbell to join Careful Gaze.
He's thinking about it.
He's you've
talks.
been in contact.
Yeah.
Cool. Wrapping things up with the closer. Sounds like you might have some stuff to say about this one, but not tunneled. What are some highlights from that? What are some moments from just kind of creation process, lyric writing, bringing that song to life?
I cried while we recorded it.
I was gonna say, how many times
Like-
have you cried listening to it or recording?
I still do. I have to skip it when I'm listening to the album, depending on where I am, because it hits a chord with me. Man, I was crying to that song before we even actually recorded it when we just had the demo. It's an emotional song. It's also the favorite album closer I've ever been a part of. Just getting to build it when we were recording it, because the original idea, at least guitar wise, stayed mostly the same. Drums were different. But just getting to add all of the synth layers and just breathe in the life of it and have it explode like it does was probably the highlight of recording for me. That was the song when we got done with it. I went, yeah, that's it. Like,
I forgot how many. I forgot. There's like, is there 2 guitar tracks that are just like infinite verb on this?
yeah, those are the neural plugins.
Yeah.
we
We just got really like, we darkened the studio.
just those single note plucks that happen at the beginning of the first chorus. I took, because when we recorded, okay, here we go into nerd talk.
Oh no, music podcast.
So we use Kempers. We recorded everything through the Kemper, but I also captured DI just in case I hated something. I could go back and reamp it. And for whatever reason, I was like, I have a sound that I want to use for this. So we pulled up one of my many amp plugins, and with the DI just used this. It was a Loath patch on one of the Neural DSP plugins that just, it's practically an orchestral patch. Just a ton of effects, unnecessary. And I threw the DI in there, and little did I know that the verb tail just never ended. We have it fade in the song, and you can hear it in the second, when the second verse drops and everything drops out, you can hear when it stops. It's one of my little things with the album that
little gripe.
one of my little gripes. But it just added, I think that was the start of us being like, okay, like this thing's going to explode at the end. And that could, so there's a never ending verb tail through almost most of the song.
The ending reminds me of the Japanese post-rock band Mono, and that makes me very happy, like musically. And I got to see them at Turf Club. It was so good. I've never seen 2 guitarists sitting in a chair go so hard, like swinging their guitars while they're just like seated on
I
stage.
remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, it was fucking wild. But I think this song is like fairly self-explanatory lyric-wise, so I won't go too deep into it. But I also am doing a Patreon thing right now where I kind of like do a deep dive on the lyrics for every song. So I guess if people like really want to know, there's also that. But I think
Like, comment, and subscribe. Toss them a few bucks.
Yeah.
For those deep dives. Even
Patreon.com/Careful
deeper.
Gaze.
The tunnel keeps going. Pun not intended. Poor portrait words.
Oh shit.
Not tunneled, more like very tunneled.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing was Bailey, like shortly after joining the band, living with Preston, we were like still just like demoing this one out, and he came in and started like helping with it. And I think that was like the first song that you did that on after joining. So that was just kind of cool because that was the first, like, that was, I think, the only one of the old demos that he helped work on, or one of the only ones. And then also obviously it helped like reshape it. And now like seeing where it is just really cool. And yeah, that's definitely my favorite like album closer we've ever done.
It's very just like end of a movie, like triumphant much different than the opener. Also lyrically, like the tank ran out this time, not South of Fargo. It takes me back to when we almost ran out of gas.
I guess that's noteworthy. Aslan didn't plan for
Yeah.
stopping for gas.
He didn't, and I just remember waking up and just like kind of hearing a panic, and like it just takes me back to that entire weekend run, because that weekend run was like personally absolute hell for me in my personal life, and then just like hearing that, and then just remembering that the time we almost ran out of gas.
That was when the parents did the prayer circle. for us.
That's when my father at the time, now ex-father-in-law, emailed my mother being like, "I'm sorry, your son is no longer a Christian," and just like
all of our band's parents that were in the band at the time got like together and had like a weird prayer meeting for us.
it was super weird. My mom, yeah.
And we were like, what?
My mom kept calling me all weekend, like, and my brothers were like, "Yeah, it's a lot. It's funny now. It's fucking hilarious." But like listening to
In the
that,
moment, yeah.
listening to that, and just like remembering where I was like, "Oh God, you're right. We almost did run out of gas. Holy shit!" They do.
Yeah, building the rhythms for this was also very, very cool. Again, trying to like focus on dynamics. What can we do to not like overplay, and or what can we do to make the ending of the song where it's like really, really big and not have like a traditional beat or pattern, but mix it up a little bit, but still try to keep that really, really big portion in the rhythms. Love this song. I think it's a phenomenal closer.
Agree. Yeah, the opener and the closer for this album are both like, oh, this is the opener, this is the closer. It's again that intentionality, which is something I really appreciate.
Appropriately too, this was another one that started as just like an empty, sad acoustic demo that I recorded by myself and sent to the band. So like both it bookends really nicely in that way, because they were both essentially just like acoustic tracks that turned into larger works.
Yeah. I do not know what just happened.
Don't mind me and Ben over here just getting in fights.
Just playing footsie.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
we're all good. Cool. That kind of wraps up specific album related questions. Something that I like asking bands. Love some repeat questions. When was a time that you individually really felt like Careful Gaze was accomplishing what you wanted it to, either just creatively or just it really fulfilled you? Like whether it was maybe like hearing the mix for the first time, like hearing a song you just tracked back for the first time and just really that kind of hits you, or just a particularly like really fond memory of like a live show. Just when was a moment you really were like, yes, this is what I want this band to be. This is why I'm in this band. This is what I think we can do. And that really, those validating moments that come at least from time to time, I hope, when you're in a band.
I think mine would be really seeing how many people came in from like other states. And there was actually, I think, more people from out of town at the show than there were from like the local scene and stuff. And just seeing that was really cool. And I guess like how much our music like means to people, not just here, but like kind of all over. And then there's like a specific person that they've expressed before. That's like the first time that they felt like safe in the scene again and like okay coming to shows has been like during our like coming to our shows and like during our first album release show. And so like that was really cool. And they actually came up and asked me to do their wedding. So this podcast is just about how I officiate weddings.
Yeah.
But like that
nice.
in
Is this
that
a
moment,
plug for your wedding business?
Yep. Mhm.
plug for your wedding.
Please, no one else ask me to do weddings. I would like to be done after 2 more. But I like always like have, like really just for like the people that maybe don't have like they're having like non-traditional weddings and stuff, like that's kind of like my jam. So like that's why I was ordained in the first place. But you okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just like you stop the wedding plug and then you're like, but like I just do it, Gabriel.j.reader@gmail.com. It was so funny because it then truly sounded like a comical like wedding pitch.
Reach out on LinkedIn. But I think that just like, because the whole thing that we really wanted to do is just like, I guess, give people that maybe don't normally feel like they have like a place in like the heavy music scene and like listening to the type of music that we create, like give people a place that they can feel like comfortable and supported and like know and understood. So I think seeing that manifest itself physically is always the point where I will most feel like we've done what we want to do.
Yeah, the release show that was really cool. Just to, because in all that stuff, I'm like, will anybody come? I don't know. And then we showed up and people came and like cared. And I know that there was people, like a bunch of people from out of state that like flew in or drove in. And like, I know that there was more people that wanted to be there that couldn't. And it was just like, this is wild that anyone would drive X amount of hours to come see. And then like, just like people from the local scene, like coming out and supporting, like it was very cool. And like, I got to reconnect with some old coworkers and like went and hung out with them. It was just a cool, like, everyone's homies here. Hell yeah. Like, but, and also like before that, I guess like the Coyote Kid show.
That's what I was going to touch on.
Like the Coyote Kid show and like having like Dury and just all of them like care enough about this to like want to have us on that and like is wild to me. And like just to hear people singing lyrics back, it's like, what? This is weird, but okay. I'm cool with this, but what?
Yeah, the Coyote Kid show for me was definitely like one of those moments where you're like, holy crap. One of the biggest crowds I've ever played. And it definitely was probably one of the most fun shows, if not like any of the other October 2021 shows that we did, either here or out of state. And then, yeah, the release show, of course. But to have the amount of people that were in that room at the Coyote show, like actually like looking and engaged and like having a good time, that was really, really cool for me to witness. And like, I don't witness much when I'm playing drums on stage because that's like the only time I get to turn my brain off, ironically. But you know, when I would look and I would, you know, see people and they're like wide eyed and just like, yes, like getting into it, like that was very, very cool to witness. And then just, you know, to be in that atmosphere where there's just like you're shoulder to shoulder with just people that are just there to see music. Yeah, that was really, really cool. And I think a defining moment in like what we're doing means something to people
in your rock career.
Yeah, mine's probably the Coyote Kid show, specifically Highways. Playing Highways and having most of a room singing it back to you is surreal. Like that whole song just didn't feel real while we were playing it, especially because we pulled it out of our asses, hadn't practiced it in months.
Yeah, in our Discord, people were like talking about encoring us to get us to play more, and I was like, we didn't want to encore at a like supporting a band's breakup show.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, tell you what, we got a little extra time. We'll just work a song in, just don't encore us. And so we did Highways Sideways, which is, for people that don't know, the opening track of our first album. And it's just like, I guess it kind of became, sort of like a mainstay in our catalog as one that people really like.
Didn't we do that one without any tracks or click too?
Yeah.
We just kind of did it free. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were free. I'm not going to say the word that I was initially thinking, but
Freewheeling it.
Yeah. Freewheeling. We'll go with
The freewheeling
That's
careful.
a cool phrase. Yeah.
Sick phrase, my guy.
It's very sick. Cool. So hopefully you just put an album out. You're able to take at least a little bit of space, a little bit of a deep breath, feel that sense of accomplishment, I hope. But outside
We're
of just
already writing.
we're already writing.
Yeah.
We've got about 6 tracks.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 that we've worked on so far, not to mention the conglomerate that's sitting in the Google
The
Drive.
stoner jam that me and Ben did last night is
Oh, yeah.
hilarious.
There's another stoner jam. Okay.
It's a ripper.
You didn't let me finish the question. Like, what does the band have up next besides
Everything.
kind of a handful of shows that are at least announced, scheduled? Sounds like no rest for the band, no rest for the wicked, and just continuing to work on new music. Just the grind never stops.
Yeah, probably like an EP or an album or something like that. Again, like who knows?
Yeah,
But
keeping it open.
we will have there's like a fundraiser comp that we're on that comes out in September that we covered Arcade Fire for.
Boy,
It's a sick cover, and I
Keep the car
thought,
running.
yeah, I thought I lost the entire thing. Like that was a terrifying
that would be
moment.
very scary.
And then I found it again, and we didn't have to re-record it, which is nice.
What was it that I had to teach you to like
it didn't save under like his usual Reaper session.
Yeah,
and
I had to be
so-
like, change it to this file extension, and then it worked. Or
yeah, and then
something
it worked.
that,
But like for a moment, like I went to like, I think send it over to you, and I was like, oh,
it was something kind of funny. But
no.
yeah, so we got that, and that'll probably come out on Spotify at some point too. And I think there's probably like a few remixes from the album that we'll do. I have a friend,
Very cool.
a friend that I do like synthwave stuff with from Italy that is gonna do, I think, a synthwave remix of Made from Windows. So like,
boy,
it'd be sick.
Very cool.
Very sick.
I hope it'd be sad if it sucked. I think it'll be cool. Yeah.
Manifesting, yeah.
So kind of just like that. And really at this point, I mean, we just recently got a van that we can actually like comfortably tour in. So really just trying to figure out how, when, and with who to tour and make that happening. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Happen.
Make it happen.
Make it work.
Make that happening.
Make it work.
Make it happen. Manifest.
Do the thing.
Make that happening. LP3 by Careful Gaze.
There's like a little period at the end. It's like one of those album titles that has like punctuation. 'Cause,
Yep.
like you're that kind of band. Like,
And for
yo.
some reason, Reliant K's, it's like a split with them.
Yeah.
And we still got to do that bouquet split.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
But
okay.
Yeah, we're doing a split with Bouquet where we only cover butt rock songs.
yeah.
I mean, I'll buy it. Cool. So I love ending interviews in the same way. This may cause flashbacks for the three of you that have been here before. But what are some local artists, or just maybe if they're not from the area, underappreciated, just artists, bands, friends that you want to shout out, encourage people to check out? I'm blanking, but I think one of you already had a band that you'd brought up. So definitely feel free to bring that back up if that is triggering any memory, or if I hallucinated that earlier. But yeah, there's the recommendation corner to steal the patented name from our rivals in IndieCast. Fuck
Oh.
you, Ian Cohen.
There's this band, there's this song called Up All Night that I've been listening to a lot. Not to be embarrassing, but
Cringe, bro.
it's fucking sick. I love
shit.
that song so much. National Park Service, let's go.
That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no, legitimately, like that song is so fucking good. The Motion Mosaic released a couple really sick tracks
Yeah.
recently. And I had one more. And the Canary Fell, all one word.
Oh yes.
It's like a newer,
yes.
a newer post rock band. I don't know if you know Nels from like the scene, local photographer Nels Potman shoots a lot of shows, and then Brett from Vivid Dreams and Sentence to Die, and he also does a lot of work for us, like videography and stuff. They're both in that band. I think they have a show August 12th that we can't go to because we'll be in Peoria at the Peoria Pizza Works.
They're having a show at Mortimer's in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, but those would be my local shout outs.
Let's see. Southpaw. We played with them a couple nights ago in Duluth.
They really
They were
were
awesome.
They were super, super sick. And then one of my old bands, Our Common Collapse, is dropping some new music today. Actually,
Oh, is that today?
Congratulations.
it will be out by then.
Cool.
I'm no longer in the band, but
Still cool.
still,
Yeah.
if it's the song I think it's going to be really cool. So,
And they've done like 20 Bandcamp announcements leading up to it.
oh yeah,
The announcement of the
Every day I
announcement.
wake up to a new message from Our Common Collapse on my phone through Bandcamp, and it's like, the song's coming out.
Cool.
That'll be
Is it?
sick, though. They're very heavy.
Yes. Vin
riffs.
Vin
Vin rips.
Oh,
Vin is sick.
very true.
Yeah. Gabe named a lot. I've just been listening to a lot of the new Pool Kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like Pool Kids and Suicide Boys dropped yesterday, so I've just been listening to that on repeat. So I'm not the guy to ask right now.
Very, very polar opposite.
Very
listening
polar
experiences,
opposite, but very yeah.
Yesterday was a good day for that, or Friday was a good day
Yeah.
for polar opposites of new releases.
I really dug the new Gully Boys, too, but that like goes without saying. And that's also been out for like, I don't know, a month or
month or
something.
two?
Is
Yeah.
that the one we listened to in your car? Okay,
Seriously.
that song, very good.
Very different for them. I love
Very,
it.
but very, very catchy.
Yeah, I want to shout out Phase Meridian, which is a name change from a band called Redshift. Very cool 3-piece power trio prog band. Shout out Natalie Fiddler, Getting By, which is the bassist of Natalie Fiddler's project. Getting By is rad. I want to shout
those are
out
the homies. We love
yeah,
them.
with some homies for sure. I want to shout out Junk Punk MPLS. Very cool repurposed artwork. Very, very sick. I want to shout out my friend Nick O'Cleary. They do very, very good abstract painting. They've painted a couple of my drum kits.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, which is super rad. So shouts out to them. And that's, I think, all I got on the top of my head.
Yeah.
And Irby Butcher's chicken.
Yeah.
I just love that not most people are shouting out like bands, was the question, but I appreciate like shouting out like some visual art.
Oh, yeah,
as well,
definitely.
'cause I feel it kind of, we don't want to make it about that, but like there's more than one kind of art out there and it's all sick as hell. So
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely check those.
Including
folks out.
plant-based meat.
Yes.
You looked Wes so dead in the eyes when you said that.
I just kind of like looked away. I was like, I'm going.
Oh my god.
Some plant-based glizzies.
I don't fuck around with my plant-based meat.
Yo, I want some glizzies now.
I already have forgotten what those are, so I don't.
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
I love that we had the conversation in Duluth.
ignorance again.
Sorry for breaking that for you.
I lost it in
Especially at
Duluth.
why is the podcast ending like this?
This is perfect.
Talking about hot dogs. Anyways.
Kill me.
No.
You have to suffer now.
Well, okay, don't take it that way. That's valid. Okay, we're ending this. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking time out of your day
Thank
to chat about the
you.
album. Thank you for putting the album out. It is available everywhere on all your streaming platforms. Is there any physical media currently? Okay.
Yeah, we've got
definitely check that
CDs
out.
and tapes and merch and stuff on carefulgaze.shop.
Carefulgaze.shop. Also on the Bandcamp,
No merch on there, actually.
but you can at least buy the music. Okay.
Yep.
Separate places. Get the drip, as the kids say.
Get dripped out.
I feel
Shopify's
I'm aggressively
expensive.
25 whenever I say, yeah, the drip. And now I want you to kill me. Anyways,
We'll go together.
on that note, goodbye. Thank you again, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.